Thank you.
A very good morning, ma'am. I am Harmeet, principal from Nankana Sai Public School, Ludhiana. Sir. We've got a chain of 11 schools. So my question here to Raj Singh, sir, you have been talking of 50% result going down on the online testing and all. This is the problem not only the school education faced, even the universities. We had seen a lot of, strikes going on for online and all. So what could be the proper solution to this? Because we need to prepare for the future challenges in the coming time. The assessment part has become so stringent and so mark-oriented, percentage-oriented, 99%, inflated and all. Something, the new education policy has to, come out with a solution for this. How to bring about the system out of this threatening environment of marks and percentages?
Thank you very much. And a second question?
A very good morning to all the dignitaries on and off the stage. I am from K-12 Education. We run a school and we have 2,900 students there. I second with ma'am who said about the kind of threat we have today, and sir who said that only 50% is the result. But before that, I would like to ask Mr. Bibin, sir, when we are talking about skill and when we are talking about how to integrate skill, we always talk only about the higher education. But we always feel that if you want Beckhams, bend them young. So it should start at the school, then only you will get Beckhams at your college levels. But when it comes to school level, the concentration on the skill education is becoming a parallel one, number one. Number two, people take only the subjects like AI and coding and nothing else. What we are not aware is, after 10 years, will this AI be the sought out employability skill? So how are we going to merge this gap between the universities and higher education with school education? Number one. Number two, what is that skill, apart from the 21st century skills which we are all working, that will make a child ready for future?
Thank you. That's fantastic. And we had a third question over here that we'll take. And then I'll come to the panel. Oh, excuse me, sir. It's the gentleman behind you. Okay, we'll take 4 this time. Oh, thank you. I'll come to you later, sir.
Thank you. Very good morning. And it was a very thought-provoking presentation. And my congratulations to all the panel members. I am Dr. MurrayMr, representing Government First Grade College, Kolar Goldfields. I am a commerce professor. My question is to the Finland professor. We have many schools and colleges spread across the country. When it comes to the state of Karnataka, there are a lot of colleges in every nook and corner of the state. Even a very small place has a college offering graduate courses, postgraduate courses. But when it comes to infrastructure, in terms of physical infrastructure, technical infrastructure, and intellectual infrastructure, it is not up to the level of providing a quality education. So my question is how we can focus or direct the CSR funding for school and college education to improve the infrastructure. Who can play the role of a catalyst? No doubt, here and there some funding is done by CSR for schools, colleges, but not in a very systematic way. With a time-bound action plan, who can play that role, and any specific strategy to direct the CSR funding for improving the quality of infrastructure and quality of education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we've got 3 really fantastic areas to focus on. So talking about grade inflation and the solution for grade inflation. How can we address that? How can we integrate skills throughout the entire learning journey, not just in HE? And then technical infrastructure, some of the challenges related to that, and thoughts on how we might be able to cover those. I'm going to do this an easy way. I'm going to start at one end for the first set of questions and then start at the other end for the second set of questions. Don't feel you have to answer all questions, just if there are any particular issues you'd like to elaborate on. So I'm going to come to Mika first. Sorry, sir, we'll come to you. We're going to take a second round of questions after we've answered these first ones. Thank you. So, actually, okay.
Thank you, ma'am, for asking this question. In fact, the whole country is struggling. And, ma'am, it's not only for the university level. I've had the privilege of starting a school also, which is a high school, CBSE, in rural area of Rajasthan. And we're practicing something which I mentioned here, and we've completely tried to change the evaluation process. And thanks to the thought process, even CBSE, you would agree with me, is now asking more application-oriented questions, okay? And that has helped us to some extent. Results going 50%, we didn't moderate, we didn't change it, we said, let it be. And the students said, we want to maintain our grades, which means our examination patterns were not up to the mark when it was online, mainly multiple choice questions. Without applying much of thought, we were not prepared. Faculty members were not trained in asking the questions. But in the last 2 years, what we've done, we have developed a model of 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. 1/3, which is theory part, can be easily covered through online learning. Bibin and other people have been talking to you during the last 2 years. It has been proven that we are not adding much value as far as theory lectures were concerned. The second 1/3 we have kept is campus-based, where labs and practical courses are being conducted on campus. And what time is saved through this 1/3 of theory, and thanks to regulatory environment, 40% we can teach through online, ma'am. Synchronous, asynchronous, both. We have moved it effectively outside the campus, outside the classroom. And I did mention about internship. If you go out, 15 of our students are doing internship to organize this fest or this conference, multiple activities. Yesterday, we have been granted as official partner status for the Bangalore Design Festival. 500,000 people will be visiting Bangalore between 11th November and 12th of December. April, May, we hosted Khelo India, where 9,000 people visited our campuses, and believe me, all were managed by the students. And we evaluate participation in each and every activity through rubrics. You will agree with me, marks and grades do not communicate anything. If 2 students are B+, they could be expert in different areas. They could be ignorant in completely different areas, but we as teachers and institutions label them as the same. I think the time has come, we move from examination, marks-oriented examination and grade-oriented examinations to assessment clearly indicating what student knows, what student does not know, what student can do, what he cannot do. I think I'll request all the universities and 10th, 11th, 12th classes to go back to nursery report cards, where we used to exactly write against each child what he or she can do and what he cannot do. I think assessment is the answer. For each activity, we have developed rubrics. For example, marketplace experience lab I mentioned, where students have to do actual business. We have one interdisciplinary orientation. The business orientation, entrepreneurial orientation is the second parameter, and the income they earn, the proceeds. And believe me, the learning will be so much students can never fail. So first we tried to take away the fear of failing from the student's mind, and we could effectively change their perception from earning marks to learning orientation. I think that has been the main success for us. And I recommend everybody to do it. We already moved to 50-50 evaluation. Believe me, when 2 years ago before the COVID, we were 30% continuous and 70% at the end. We moved to 50-50. Very soon we moved to 70-30, this rewards.
Thank you.
And every project has a credit weightage in each semester. 3 credit units in each semester we integrated. It fulfills the requirement of NAB, fulfills the requirement of choice-based credit system of University Grants Commission. Within the framework, believe me, the kind of flexibility we as teachers have now was never in the history of education in the country.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Who else would like to speak next? Who's got some points they'd like to make on those questions? Lovely. It should be on.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and ma'am asked specifically about, the skills required from schools to college. And I have these conversations with many universities and employers, right? I mean, this problem exists throughout that spectrum. So when we talk to the universities, they tell us that students who come into universities don't have the basic skills. And then when I talk to employers, they say that graduates don't have the employable skills when they go in, right? So clearly there is something going on here, right? And I think to your point, you mentioned AI as an example, but I think if you go into the specifics of, as an example, AI, right? What really drives AI is, at the core of it is math, statistics, those kind of skills, foundational skills. Today, I think rather than thinking of it as AI specifically at the school levels, how do you build those foundational skills which will lead to an AI-based, it's an application of math and statistics and other skills like that, right? How do you focus on those things? Second, I think the key skills that we need to prepare students for is those human skills, which is really problem solving, research skills, which is what I think project-based approach really kind of bring out. And I think that's the sort of the change that we may want to think at school level to actually prepare them for those research skills, which I think becomes very critical as you get into higher education as well as at the job, right? I feel like that's where we can look at it. And then at the core of it, we also, when we think about building out specific deep knowledge, right? I mean, it's about application really, and how do we bring together, and I love some of the things that Dr. Raj mentioned about bringing that interdisciplinary nature of conversations, right? I mean, whether it is your discipline or bring together a bunch of disciplines to actually work on a problem statement together. I'm not sure how you can implement it at a school level, but I think that's the way the world is moving towards, and I imagine we need to be preparing our students for that. We all know that AI, whether it will last for 10 years or not, or whether it will be just taken for granted, right? I mean, today we are all making a big hue and cry about self-driving cars and autonomous cars. Probably in another 10, 15 years, it's probably going to be taken for granted, right? I mean, like, I guess, broadband and 5G and 4G today, but tomorrow it will be 5G. We'll take it for granted, right? I mean, and I think that's the world we are going to be preparing our students for.
Thank you.
I feel, so let's go into the core of it, the foundational skills that will determine it. The application skills that are in vogue at that point in time. Today it's AI, data science. There are enough things. Like Coursera has many professional certificates, for example, that prepare students for all of those skills that we are talking about, which are industry ready and all of that, which will always be topical. But I think at the core, there's also a foundational layer below that. That's the way I see it.
Great. Mika, any points from you?
Okay, thank you. If I got the question correct, it was about how to utilize better CSR funding for VET and vocational education, how to connect companies better to this. This is a very relevant question, actually, and we are very happy, by the way, to conduct this discussion, for instance, with Kerala government. Kerala Chief Minister is going to Finland. It's just 2 weeks to meet our education minister, and we are very inspiring discussions on this. This is actually something that we have been thinking as well in the embassy, and one solution, of course, as a Finn, I'm looking at the Finnish companies who are also present here. We have a Finnish Chamber of Commerce in Delhi, and they also have a pooled CSR funding pot. So we have constant discussions actually on this issue, that how should we utilize these funds to create some kind of program for vocational training, how to take students and interns to our Finnish companies, and then later maybe extend this to other companies, or Indian companies in Finland, for instance, and so forth. We have some models in Finland. The higher vocational education, for instance, is very tightly connected to industries, so that students, when they are taking their bachelor degrees, they already do internships or placement, like it is called in India. They do it in companies. But I fully agree with my colleague from Kerala that we have to think this again, and we have to improve and get companies more involved, because there are a lot of things to be developed together.
Thank you. Philip, anything to add?
Well, I was actually thinking more around the first topic, which was grades inflation. And some of the challenges that we've seen is that because over the last couple of years there's been so little physical contact between faculty and students, that you remove that idea of not so much bias, but you remove the idea of, I know that student, I've taught that student, I know that student knows that information, and therefore where I might have looked at their grade and gone, that's a B, right? But I thought, well, I know that kid is trying hard. I'm going to add a little bit on, right? So when we see this, and over the last 2 years, you've removed that degree of adjustment. You've removed it because there's nothing else that a faculty member can apply. You've only got the grade in front of you to look at. No longer do I see the child or the student out in the courtyard, neither do I see them in engaging in social activities. I can only go on the grade that they have. So that, of course, creates a bit of a problem, because if we're only assessing what is actually on the paper or on the document, it also means that we really should be looking at how else we can view the skill sets that they pick up at the university or at the school beyond just what happens in the class, because it has such a dynamic impact on what actually students' results are. So, that's obviously an area that we're looking at. How do we find ways to help faculty and administrators assess students beyond the curriculum so that we've got a better, more holistic view of how a student is overall performing? So when we do have a grade, it's not just about a technical skill, it's also about their socialising.
That's fantastic, thank you. Right, I'm going to come back out for some more questions. You've had a little bit of time to think. Lovely. We've got 2 gentlemen in the middle there, and then a lady in blue there. So 3 questions from there. Oh, it was, okay, we'll have 4. Well, the gentleman, then the 2 gentlemen there, and the lady. But make them short, please, because we've only got 11 minutes.
Good day, all of you. I'd like to know from the panelists regarding the involvement of all the stakeholders in the curriculum making. So it's pretty well that educators need to be the part of curriculum making, but how for the parents and the students? What will be their maturity level and what will be their contribution level for others? Is there any orientation need to be done before involving them into the curriculum making? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then we'll move along to the lady in blue. The lady just there in blue. The lady in blue, that's it, lovely.
Hello. I'm into K-12 teacher education, and we run Cambridge accredited PDQs and other stuff. I was deeply impressed by the talk on assessing non-cognitive skills. And you were all the time speaking about how to assess them. I will certainly have an offline conversation with you of assessing those skills. But I am interested in knowing, since the topic today is curriculum, how do we integrate this non-cognitive skills into the curriculum, K-12 curriculum? If you visit schools, each one has their own agenda. Somebody is talking of team, somebody is talking collaboration, somebody is talking citizenship. There is no uniform guideline, even in the NES policy, as far as I can understand.
Thank
I
you.
would like some insight into that.
Okay, thank you very much. And then we have the 2 questions in the middle here. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. Myself, Shivas from Kerala. I'm representing one of the CBSE schools. So, representative from Finland was talking about the flexibility of choices of our students in the schools. So I like that word. But my questions to every panelist here participating, shall we expect an era without a word called examination in the future?
Thank you.
A very simple question.
Thank you very much. Lovely. And the 4th question from the gentleman in the middle. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Baba Lunderi University in Amritwayani Group in Maharashtra. My question is to Dr. Raj Singh, Vice Chancellor from Jain University. Sir, you have said that working flexibility is there, like 4 hours of teaching and 4 hours of working in industry. So wherein in American and European universities that is there. But how to prepare the mindset of stakeholders in India, maybe parents and educators and the industries, to make this stage available for the company. At this stage, even if parent side and in industry side, we don't get that much support for giving this flexibility. So I would like to put you the light on in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's fantastic. So we've got 2, first and last question there really about parental collaboration, but also wider stakeholders on engaging in the embracing skills within the education journey. how do we integrate skills into schools, and then will exams exist in the future, I think. So let's start off. Philip, I'm going to come to you first and ask your thoughts on some or all of those topics.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm really just going to pick one, and it's kind of revolving around the role of stakeholders. A lot of the time we view the role of a stakeholder as really being the ministry. And, that's obviously has its role because it sets the goal. But there are lots of other stakeholders that have a direct impact on what happens. Just because a student is recruited to a university and they receive a degree, a lot of the time it's considered then to be successful. But the stakeholder that determines the success of the student happens after they leave. So really, when we look at this industry, we should be saying, okay, what is it that an industry values? What is it that is actually successful? Therefore, who has the greatest stake in ensuring the capabilities and the success of that candidate? So a lot of the time we don't see that at the round table. We see a component of it, but we certainly don't see it taking a broader role that it really should have. What happens after the student leaves?
Thank you. And what's the Finnish perspective on some of these issues, Mika? It should be on.
Okay, so did I get the question right about the assessment and examination for the future? So how do we assess the learning and make our assessment relevant for the future? This is a very, of course, key question. And what we try to do, maybe I take an example of the Finnish system, that the way we try to promote this is to make self-assessment, self-evaluation stronger among the students, so that they themselves already understand how they relate to others, what they should learn, what are their weaknesses, and what are the strong areas in their learning. And this is especially done in the low first classes, first three classes in the school. And then just later on, we add the outside assessment when the teacher is telling and giving more feedback. I think this is the core, actually. And this helps a lot later in the life, that you can do it by yourself. You know, whether I am good at this or not, what should I improve and what I shouldn't, what is relevant for myself and my career and my next task. This is the core, one of the key elements, but I know that there are a lot of problems still in the system, and we also want to make it and improve it. But I know that this is one issue actually that our governments are discussing currently. Very interesting question. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Bibin, coming to you, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, some of these questions are really tough ones. I mean, I think these are complex problems to solve for. Thinking about assessments and skills itself, right? I mean, one of the things that as technology platforms we can do, I mean, and there are many platforms out there. Like the way we address it is, for example, there are like about 2,000 projects on a platform like Coursera, which is about hands-on learning and showcasing skills which are actually demonstrable. Now, what we try and do in platforms of these kind of scale is to actually benchmark learners against each other to figure out how their learning experience is on the platform. And then based on how that learning happens, we actually figure out their own proficiencies based on that. So what I mean is, like, for example, someone could be doing a social media marketing certificate from Facebook. Somebody takes much more time to figure it out versus somebody else who's actually doing it very quickly. So we can actually use technology to actually figure out what is that skills that they are building and almost use that as a signaling value for the future. Now, these are the kind of, and I'm sure, like, I think the question specifically was on non-cognitive skills, but I imagine as we start building out the right mix of technology in the spread here, while at the curriculum level, we kind of build together these project-based learning. I think that's the right mix of use of technology and curriculum changes for us to be able to demonstrate what skills students are building. I think that's where we are going towards. Also, it's linked to the other question around flexibility of choice and an era without examinations, right? I mean, I think obviously examinations and assessments have a value, but today when companies start thinking about skills-based hiring and things like that, they're starting to think about, there is a credential which is based on some of the examinations and the assessments that have happened, but they're also starting to ask, what does that credential lead to in terms of actual outcomes? And which is again going back to my point about how can you demonstrate those skills either through objective parameters that a technology platform can provide, like Coursera can provide, and those signaling value, right? I mean, which is why today we have all of these employability tests and stuff like that, which are about signaling value. I think how do we build that kind of a construct within the teaching itself, so that you're not trying to go through an additional process of trying to demonstrate that actually there is an outcome, right? I mean, it becomes just part of that entire process. And I think that's where I think one of the speakers mentioned about we're trying to find this equilibrium of where technology fits in with this offline delivery model. And that's the discovery process we all have to go together to find that equilibrium point, so that we use the mix of the traditional teaching that we are doing and technology to showcase these skills. And hopefully that will lead us to a world of not needing exams as the core, right?
Thank you. And final word from Dr. Singh.
So many questions. I don't know which one to answer, and difficult ones. Thank you so much for raising these questions. Parents, I think two of the questions relate to parents' involvement or parents being convinced about what we're doing. To sometimes, I think it's unfortunate that in the school system, parents come and tell us how to teach. The school I started, first 6 months, they rejected outright. And I said, give me 3 months. I'll refund your fees and turn this campus building into a resort. Don't worry about it. And 3 months later, they were silent. They didn't say good or bad. Another 1 month, they started saying, yes, there is a change in the child. And another 3 months, they said, we wish this system was there in this rural area existing earlier. Some of the ways of assessing non-cognitive things, all of you, those are from the school system, you would know that value education was made mandatory from 1996 onwards by CBSE. And there was a thin book published by NCERT. You will go and rattle it out in the classroom and then say value education has been covered. But a lot has happened in the past. You would know that how value education could be taught through cinema. And it has a 4-stage kind of teaching learning process where you watch the film. There's a workbook where you reflect your learnings. And then you are asked certain questions. And only one question is what? The remaining 2 questions are from how and why. It doesn't stop there. Next class, they have to come and share what did they do in real life to implement the values you learned. For example, value of giving. Now, unless you give to the rest of the world, you can't imbibe these values. So I think a lot has been done, and the evaluation is purely based on all these parameters. While we move away from examinations, we have to move towards assessment. I think these two, according to me, are different things. Assessment could be cognitive and non-cognitive. In higher education, we are allowed to have indirect assessment. But in school system, I'm sure you have continuous assessment, and one of the components could be structured around non-cognitive skills being assessed and include them into the marks of continuous assessment. It's being done by many, many institutions and schools in this country. Coming to the last question which my friend asked about the parents. Yes, parents asked us question, I'm not sending my child to do business. I'm sending them to study a particular degree program. And we dubbed it as only teaching learning process. Earning is incidental, it's consequential, and it really worked. And these questions were raised by not only the parents, but alumni whom we involved and consulted. It's working very well. And we say, if you don't need money, please give it to charity. But for us, teaching learning is the main thing. And I think unless you make them work hands-on, some of the learnings cannot be derived here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.